Well, our 11 a.m. advisory on Tropical Storm Debby is in, and worth noting that our winds are down to sustained of 40 miles an hour. So this is just 1 mile an hour above the threshold for a tropical depression. So Debby has continued to weaken over land as has made very slow progress from the Big Bend area of Florida all the way up here to the southeast corner of Georgia. The center of circulation appears to be somewhere just around the Hilton Head Island area, but it will continue with its more easterly direction right now. So you're seeing the movement now east-northeast, having more of a easterly component back out to the Atlantic Ocean, and that in turn is going to put it over some semi-warm waters. Not quite as warm as the Gulf, but still is going to create some more organization as Debby does continue to move out to sea. So pressure right now, central low pressure of 999 millibars. The higher that pressure goes is more indicative of weakening, but we are expecting it to strengthen over the next day or so as it moves back out towards the Atlantic Ocean. So over the next couple of days, you can see this easterly component with the hurricane cone track, but then it looks to make another landfall somewhere on the coast of South Carolina. It looks to be close to the Charleston area as of right now, but worth noting it's not going to intensify any more than tropical storm status. We're not looking at it bumping back up to hurricane status by any means, but the winds will probably have a little bit of a stronger component to them as that circulation does organize a little bit more when Debby does track over the warm Atlantic waters. But the cone still remains to have the consensus of a northeasterly direction over into the weekend and all the way through the weekend, in fact, and once it gets further up into the mid-Atlantic region of the United States, it looks to become a remnant low pressure system and hopefully start to dissolve in nature. But it still looks to bring historic flooding to the Georgia coast along with the South Carolina and North Carolina coast. And worth noting that Debby, it did make landfall as a Category 1 yesterday, so a little over 24 hours ago now. And just taking a look at how far it has progressed, not far whatsoever. So it made landfall in the Big Bend area around 7 a.m. in Steinhatchee, Florida. Also worth noting that this is about 15 to 20 miles away from where Hurricane Idalia a little less than a year ago made landfall. So it has tracked further up to the northeast, but not traveled very far. So that very corner that you're seeing in this box right here is where Debby's center of circulation is. So it really hasn't traveled far, continuing to dump bunches and buckets of rain all over northern Florida, into southern Georgia, southeastern coastal Georgia, and now eventually into the southeastern coast of South Carolina. So taking a look at it right now, this has constituted another weather impact alert day for Tuesday here in central Georgia. The same impacts remain, the risk of flooding being the main concern in our far southeastern counties, but also strong and damaging winds going to be possible as well. And with all the rainfall that we've received further down to the southeast, those damaging and gusty winds can definitely make things like trees a lot more susceptible to blowing on over with the very saturated soil, but also knocking down limbs, blocking down roadways, and even knocking down power lines, damaging outdoor structures. So that's why we're continuing to issue this weather impact alert day for one more day into Tuesday. Taking a look at our flood watch right now, many of our counties that we did see yesterday have been trimmed off of this. So counties like Hancock up into Baldwin, as far down south as Dooley and Chris counties, so around Unadilla and Cordele, all those counties have been taken out of this flood watch, but still the counties that remain in the green, we're looking at Wilkinson, Washington, all the way down into Montgomery, Wheeler, and Telfair counties, and everywhere in between shaded in this green. So those low-lying areas near bodies of water, so if you live near a creek, a stream, or you have a pond near your house, you're going to be more susceptible to flash flooding. But also the heavier rain totals continuing to be further that you go down south, or further that you go down I-16, so towards the south and east here in central Georgia. But we have had a lot of changes to our tropical storm watches and warnings. You can see the tropical storm watches, or warnings rather, I should say, in the red extend all the way up the South Carolina coast, and then we start to get some watches here on the Carolina coast of the Atlantic Ocean. But many counties here in southern Georgia and in central Georgia here have been trimmed off of these warnings. The only county that does remain is Montgomery County right here, so they are more susceptible to seeing those kind of tropical storm force winds or impacts, so 39 miles an hour all the way up to 74 miles an hour. But any gusts that we do see, so the occasional gusts, not those sustained winds, we are looking at them to be on the lower end of that range further down there. So that is good news as confidence grows that Debby is going to continue to track out to the east and hopefully towards the northeast pretty soon. We'll take it through future view right now. Those outer bands of rain encompassing our far eastern counties right there. So continuing to dump buckets upon buckets of rain. And as we get into this evening, we're starting to see those outer bands finally move on out as Debby continues to move offshore. And that's going to set the stage for a relatively dry Wednesday. And you'll notice that one thing with this, our temperatures have been in the 80s the past couple of days here in central Georgia with plenty of cloud cover, maybe even a steady drizzle if you live further up to the northwest. But once we get to Wednesday, yes, the scorching hot temperatures are back. High temperatures in the upper 90s and with sufficient coefficient dew point still in the low 70s, it is definitely going to have quite an influence on our temperatures. But we still can't rule out a stray shower chance. And as we go into Thursday, we could continue to see some more of those outer bands of rain kind of clip central Georgia as it does make its way through the state of South Carolina. Now taking a look at our long-range models, still a lot of disagreement. This GFS model has been very adamant about re-entry here in central Georgia, but all the other models that I have taken a look at over the past couple of days continue, like the Euro model, and trekking Debby up to our northeast, and that is kind of the general consensus right now. That is where the greatest confidence does lie. But no matter where Debby does go, once we get on into Friday and Saturday, we look to have a frontal boundary push through, and that's going to push Debby back out to sea wherever it may be here in central Georgia or further up the Atlantic coast around North Carolina and Virginia. So that is good news, and hopefully setting the stage for a dry into the weekend after buckets of rain that we have had here in central Georgia. But once again, that weather impact alert day for today, the main impact is going to be flooding and gusty winds, but not just limited to these southeastern counties. That's where you're going to see those highest rainfall totals. Already seen that yesterday and continuing to dump another 2 to 4 inches of rain on those counties, but gusty winds still persisting further up to the northwest. We even have had gusts up to about 35 miles an hour up here in Bibb County and Macon as of today. So mainly those counties, but still going to see the gusty winds elsewhere all across central Georgia as that center of circulation is still fairly close to us. But be sure to drive carefully. When you have those gusty winds, it can cause you to swerve, so be sure to keep your hands on 10 and 2 while you are driving, especially along the I-16 corridor. Continue to stay updated with us throughout the day here at 13 WMAZ as we continue to track Tropical Storm Debby.